knew it. Krampus, vile enemy of Christmas.
What's up, movie maniacs? Welcome to Horror Fiend TV, three corners of horror, and it's officially the holidays, and you know what that means. Christmas horror movies. When you're a horror fiend, it's always Halloween. Remember that.
Yep.
I am Ricky Grimes. JR, what's up?
What's up, man? You guys ready to put up the tree and I don't know, and decorate it with some little taste of horror?
I'm always ready, son. Always ready. What's up, Joe?
What's up? I would rather have some coquito or, even some eggnog and then sit back and watch some good old Christmas horror movies. So what's up, everybody? Welcome back.
I can't do coquito, man. Coquito, I love it. Don't get me wrong. It doesn't sit well with me. Last time I had coquito was in JR's place, like, what, 8-9 years ago? And
no, like 2 or 3 years ago. I'm making some more this year.
I don't. You make it. I don't drink it though. Whew, I had a rough morning the next night. So. Anyway, this episode we are going to go to the small town of Bailey Downs, where Santa has been quite busy. And he ain't handing out no gifts. I'll tell you that right now. Tonight we review a Christmas horror story. A little film that not many people quite know about. I didn't know about this until GR brought it to my attention. I'm always down for some holiday horror. This one, where would it rank? You'll have to wait until the end of the video to find out what we thought about it. But yeah, so this is it's an anthology flick. It's a little different as far as the structure. Now, when I first saw it, I was kind of thrown off a bit. But once the movie progressed, I kind of caught what was going on. But I'll leave that for you two gentlemen to discuss first. So yeah, let's get started. JR, the structure of this film, like I said, it's a little unique. What did you think of it?
Well, I mean, the fact that you start off immediately with a little bit of a horror scene right off the bat, it dips right into the Christmas mood. You see the image of the mall. You hear our boy Dangerous Dan, played by the almighty William Shatner. Now, one quick twist about this movie is that Bailey Downs was the original town in the movie, if you're a big horror fan, of Ginger Snaps. So
nice.
You're gonna recognize the town.
That was a nice little callback there, little homage.
Yeah,
it's good homage. And I mean, this movie it is horror, but a lot of the quick stories are. I mean, it goes from the greed of a son to a father trying to make amends, and a trio who I don't know. They want to spend their Christmas Eve doing something a little paranormal.
Joe, what's up, Joe?
Now, I love anthology movies. Horror of all types. I love them all. What I did like of this one, though, is that even though they kept cutting to the different stories, it didn't feel choppy. So, kudos for the editing, the way that it was done, because it didn't feel like a choppy story. As it kept jumping around, you actually never really got lost in what was going on. But like I said, I love anthologies. Trilogy of Terror was one of my first anthology movies that I've seen. Love that one. Trick or Treat is one of my new favorite ones. And obviously Creepshow, VHS. But for me, it was finally good to see a Christmas horror anthology movie. So I was kind of looking forward to this. JR introduced me to this one too. So yeah, I was looking forward to this one.
Yeah. So if you were to tell me this film, go watch it, but you never told me it was an anthology film, I would have been really confused to start. Because unlike anthology films, when I went in, because I knew it was an anthology film, normally you'll have all the stories separate, self-contained, and it goes along. Sometimes they bookend. But this one did kind of intertwine all the stories into one film, but it kept jumping back and forth. So you're thinking it's just one story when in fact there's separate stories within the film. It is bookended by William Shatner's Dangerous Dan character, but Joe.
Well, it's funny that you said that because after we were done, Adam thought that the whole everything, what all of it was all Santa Claus.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no. I'm like, we were dealing with three. They were all three separate stories. He's like, really? So I thought it was all, as we discussed later on, what happens with Santa Claus, but he thought it was all Santa Claus.
Yeah. I could see how casual viewers would get confused. I got confused, and I don't consider myself a casual horror fan at all. But as it progressed, I kind of, it went along. You mentioned it was edited quite well. It was put together well. I'm not saying technically it was flawed. I'm just mean like if you don't know going in what to expect, it's gonna take you a bit to kind of like, oh, I see. Okay, so they're all separated, but they're kind of going back and forth.
I did cheat a little. I did, just because I never saw the movie. I went to look up, and as soon as I read Anthology, so I went into the movie knowing it was going to be Anthology. So that kind of does help in viewing it. I see where when it confused you. I knew that it was going to be an anthology, so my brain automatically went and knowing, all right, you're going to have to separate the stories, but all these stories are one.
Usually, like I said, they're separated. There could be other films that did this already, but I didn't. Like, I wasn't expecting that, but I'm not knocking. I'm not knocking points. Oh no, I don't consider that an anthology film. Come on, man. The structure it didn't always work, but it was good enough. It wasn't to the point where I didn't enjoy the film because of that. And there is a lot of characters in this film intertwined. It goes back and forth. A lot of just different. There's a family. There's the like you mentioned before, the teenagers breaking into that the paranormal area where there was a murder, right?
Yeah, it was a school.
Yeah,
it was a school. Yeah,
the school they go to.
Yep. So they broke in to make like a documentary in there. Then you had the Santa story. So there's a lot of interesting stuff going on. So Joe, why don't you tell us first? Like describe the characters that jumped out to you, and briefly just discuss their stories and how they were formatted into the film.
Well, like for me, as I said, this is an anthology. So first you had Santa Claus and his crazy elves, even though they weren't really crazy, it turns out they were zombies, so you had that story. And you also, at the same time, had the story of Will, little boy who goes to the woods with his mother and father so they can get a tree. And they literally just drive out to some random woods to, chop down a tree. So you got those two stories going, as well as the family. I mean, one thing this movie does good is the only area where you actually have a slight intertwine of storylines is when you see the characters of Molly, Ben, and Dylan, who are the three who are going to break into the school. Now they're given the key by Caprice to the school, so that's the first interaction you see with one of the families. So here you have Molly, who the first time I see her, I thought it was young Emma Stone. She looks just like Emma Stone. So I'm like, she's a good actress. I've seen her in a couple of things. She's actually a really good actress.
At first, I thought it was Emma Stone. At first, I was like, "Oh, is that Emma
Zoe de Gran Mason."
Yes. So they go. You got them, starting their adventure, knowing they're going to do something bad to break into this to school and do their hallway of horror storyline. And then when Caprice leaves, she gets into the car with her dad Taylor. Now the brother Duncan was actually in the Vacation movie. He played the little brother who was a pain in the ass.
Actually, he was also in The Gifted.
Yes,
Fox is The Gifted. He was part of the Von Strucker twins.
Very good actor. And they get in a car. Now you have a father who all he wants to do is have a good time with his family, and they're going to go visit Aunt Edna. And then as they're driving, they drive past who? Will and his family going to the tree. So that's just the only moment in the film where you had a slight intertwine of the storyline.
Yeah.
But, and then once again, Dangerous Dan, I mean, the sequence he had where he's trying his best against the spirit, of Christmas, talking about, yes, I'm going to talk, it's tomorrow's baby Jesus' birthday. And I like baby Jesus. I don't like him when he turned into a hippie with sandals, but I like baby Jesus. Then he starts talking about, there's going to be a food drive that starts talking to Storm and Norman, who, he's telling him, hey, Norm, is there going to be somebody special who's going to be down there? And you get a shot of Norm just looking down. All of a sudden, he starts writing, and Danger's in. Oh, he's writing me a Christmas card. Oh, this is going to be good. This is going to be good. Puts up the card, says, fuck Christmas. And whoa. Did you see that, Susan? Did you see that? You know who else saw that? Baby Jesus and his dad too. I mean, I love that. William Shatner broke the stories in between us. Sometimes they were being told, but for me, it was a good ensemble of different characters to get this anthology going.
Yeah, this William Shatner's character. I mean, obviously he was there for star power. I mean, his point of the film was to sit there, get like slosh out of his mind talking about Christmas.
And we never saw Susan, by the way.
Oh,
Nope.
But
we never saw Susan.
the fact
We
that
kept talking to Susan, but we
fact
never
is-
saw Susan.
But that's funny because normally I listen to a lot of radio shows. There's always that one producer in the background that they always talk to. You never see this person whatsoever. So when he was doing that, that's what it kind of reminded me of. But Dangerous Dan, yeah.
I'm gonna eat your fucking brains out, you Christmas cunt. Fuck you! I'll break that fucking stop in your rosy cheeked ass, you fucker!
I'm sorry, Shiny. I know it isn't your fault.
You don't have the Christmas balls, you fucking...
Krampus is an essential part of this film. The character of Krampus. Now, you may have know who he is. You may know the mythology, but Joe, I want you, for the people who don't know anything about Krampus, his mythology, and also talk about his role in this film in particular. What can you tell us?
So there are a couple of other Krampus movies out. You know, you have the 2013 Krampus, the Christmas Devil, and also 2015 with my horror fave, Toni Collette, that I highly recommend. But off the bat, what I liked about this one is that Krampus, like the figure was like all white. And generally when you see Krampus is either depicted all black or he's covered in a lot of fur, which could either be brown or black. And sometimes even wearing like a cloak, because the one thing about Krampus is that Krampus is the shadow of Santa Claus. Krampus was originated in Germany, but other countries have their own Krampus. You've got England, Ireland, and I mean, heck, freaking Japan's got Krampus. I would like for Japan to do a Krampus horror movie. Can you imagine what their Krampus horror movie would be like?
Sick.
Yeah, I mean, it would be great. But yeah, so that's what I liked is that for this movie, their Krampus was completely different, and I mentioned that he's the shadow of Santa Claus. But yeah, in this one, because he's all white, he's taken out of the shadows.
Yeah, he looks good.
So yeah, he looked good. And then the thing about Krampus, he goes after the non-believers of Santa Claus, but mostly he goes after the naughty, the ones who've been bad.
That being said, they surrounded this Krampus storyline with the Bauer family, which, like I said, was Taylor, Priest, Duncan. Apologize for the wife's name, but so they're on this travel to go to Aunt Edda's house. Now, you believe the intention is to go spend time with their, Taylor's aunt. In reality, what it was is Taylor needed money, and Aunt Edna's the richest out of the whole family. So he lied to his family. He's been lying to his family about this business he has. So right off the bat, bam, that's his wicked. That's his bad thing he's doing. They get to the house. Duncan, who's a little badass, grabs a figurine, breaks it, doesn't care about it. And you got Gerard that comes and starts telling him about Krampus.
What did he break, though?
He broke a figure of Krampus. And it was...
I hated that kid. Oh, my God, I hated that kid.
But that's how he is in
almost everything.
Movies.
Yeah.
Yes, he's just a brat in all the movies he does. But Gary was so mad that he broke this figurine that told him that Krampus is coming after you. So what happens? They're driving down the road. They're arguing in the car. He almost hits Krampus. And the minute they got the car, it's just one by one, they're getting hunted down by Krampus, except for one character, which was Caprice. Which, what I like about this Krampus too is it wasn't just a figure that appeared. It was somebody that took the personification of Krampus, turned into Krampus. Because you had Gerard that turned into Krampus. He went after them. Basically, he was going after the kid for breaking the figurine, and he went after the rest of the family. And then when Caprice ends up taking him down, she goes to Aunt Edda's, and what does she do? She turns into Krampus to kill the aunt who's been, like she said, you've been very naughty. So I mean, it was interesting to have the Krampus character surround his family. They were they were like the socialites. And reality is just that they were all wicked, except for Caprice, because she survived.
Well, funny with that though is because Edna sat there and told Caprice the story of Krampus. That basically that the reason that it took over, you said his name, I forgot.
Gerard.
The reason it took over him was because of his anger.
That guy's in so much stuff too, man.
Oh my god, yeah, dude.
Creepy.
When I saw him, I was trying to think like my brain. I remember like he was
Supernatural.
He was Supernatural, but he was in some movie where he was the janitor.
Survival of the Dead.
Holy crap.
That's the kind of actor that
Urban Legend. He
that's
was
an
an Urban
actor
Legend.
that you don't know his name, but you recognize him.
You recognize his face.
Nobody
You see
knows the
him.
poor guy's name. He's so distinct in features. You know?
But so yeah, Edna explains to Caprice that Krampus takes over the person who with hate, and that the reason she had sent him away was because of how angry he was. So she realized, okay, well, I'm angry now. You let my family die. I'm gonna go ahead and let him take over me. And she ends up killing Edna, becoming Krampus.
We end this tonight.
Actually, this was one of my favorite parts of the whole entire movie, this story itself. And it wasn't a possession. Actually, it was when I started watching it, as soon as the little boy came out from the tree, and as soon as the boy came up from the tree, and the way he just kind of looked, you knew it wasn't the same kid. So this is what's a changeling. And off the bat, I knew that's what we were dealing with. It was going to be a changeling. So changelings don't actually take possession. Changelings are the children of fairies and elves. They're kind of deformed. They're shapeshifters. So they take over the form of the person that they take. And in some of the stories, they do actually, hide them in trees, which is what's great in this one. Because, you have the Krampus folklore. So now you got introduced to the changeling folklore. And I'm a big fan of the changeling stuff. There's a couple of other movies that have been out with it. But yeah, for me, this was my favorite story out of all the stories. This was my favorite one. And, just because even though I caught it off the bat, I still enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's different. You wouldn't like we know of the film The Changeling, but we don't really see that type of characterization in other films. Is rarely portrayed. So when you see that, it stands out. JR, what do you think?
I mean, I agree with Joe. This is probably out of all the stories, this was the deepest one.
He was creepy too, that kid.
Well, it was not only the kid, but think about this: is when the mom came home, the kid was a changeling, and so was the husband. The husband was somebody who wasn't himself. Even they got into an argument where she says, you always go back to the way you are. So you had two characters who went to home with this woman who weren't the same people. So I kind of went a little in depth with this because this whole story was about a father trying to make amends to this kid. Obviously, there's some deep chasm between the mother and the father, and the kid's in the middle. So even when he's trying to get to know his son, he doesn't really know his son because one, it's a changeling. But it's almost like you got the feeling that he never knew who his son was anyways. Like he was just there to be there. And the fact that, the mother kind of just, how to put it, she pushed back every time he goes, something's wrong with him, something's wrong with him, something's wrong with him. She goes, no, you just don't know him. So she was always defensive, even to the point where, it was obvious it wasn't. The scene where he's eating the spaghetti. And he's just going to town and he stabs him with the fork and just keeps going.
That was crazy.
I just thought of I guess savage would be a wrong word, but as I said, they come from the woods.
Yeah.
So it's like somebody who hadn't eaten, it was tasting something for the first time. They were really enjoying. Don't stop me.
And the fact that he thought it was like nothing. I stabbed him. Whatever. I'm just gonna continue eating my food.
But even then, he still acted like a kid. He killed the dad, and he's playing with his hand.
Yeah.
And not only that scene, but the scene where the guy calls up and says, that's not your son, that's not your son, that's not your son. And then she goes back to the woods, and I'll let Joe explain what happens when they go back to the woods, because that scene was kind of like, oh shit, a little bit more of a twist too.
Yeah, because they end up going back to the woods, and the turns out that the old man's family, has been taking care of this grove where the changelings are, so this one got out, and the mom was upset because at this point, the dad, her husband, is dead. She wants her child back. Yes, they should not have crossed the, but this is a horror movie. So in all horror movies, you're going to do what you're not supposed to do. But then she ends up killing the caretaker of the groves, and ends up fighting the changeling itself, but she ends up getting her son back. Like I said, that like it was like, it was a deeper part that this was, and yes, the father. So like the other part, if you look, when he was decorating the tree, because he mentioned to him that he wasn't there last year. They don't go into detail, so obviously, let's not generalize as to why he wasn't there, but there was a reason why he wasn't there the year before. But as he's watching him putting up the tree, his head is tilted with that curiosity. That was another sign that you knew that it wasn't, that it wasn't their kid. This is somebody who's seeing something like that for the first time. No, this was I love the story. This actually in itself could make its own movie.
Yeah, this was the deepest story within the actual film itself. I think they did a really good job with this one. I was a big fan of this one. The changeling part, I would admit, I didn't get right away. I'm not too familiar with the mythology of the changeling. So when it happens in this film and it gets to the reveal, I'm like, oh, okay, it makes sense. I thought it was a possessed kid from the jump, but when they actually flipped it around and it told you, it gave it more layer, more depth, and you could tell it was more thought out. And I like that. That was pretty cool. There's another story in this film. Now, this, like when I mentioned earlier, there's something for everyone. This is more of your, I don't want to say cliche, but more of your comfort story that you're more familiar with, where, there's a group of teens, they break into somewhere to do a paranormal video, knowing the shit that happened there prior, and the shit goes wrong, and then it doesn't end well for anybody. JR, tell us about the story with the teenagers, who the only one I recognized was the Asian kid from The 100. Like,
he's been in a lot of things.
This cast is interesting because it's got William Shatner and a couple of genre guys, and then there's a bunch of like people I've never seen before, which is not bad. I kind of like that. So JR, tell us about this story.
Yeah, so it was Molly. I mean, she's the leader of the pack. She convinced Ben and Dylan to break into the school on Christmas Eve to rehash the story and find out what happened the year prior, where you had two of the students, Jenna and Connor, who were found murdered, and the killer was still around. So as they're sitting there, recording the beginning portions of the film, they get interrupted by Principal Heather, and they immediately go cliche. They find the first door they could go into. Lo and behold, the first door leads to the area which they're going to eventually investigate. Not only investigate, but they get stuck. And their first reaction, they think, oh, maybe the principals did. So immediately you're getting turned towards a different accuser, which is not who they really is. And this is where, if you're a paranormal lover, this is where it goes into the paranormal realm.
Yeah.
Certain things start happening to them. They start seeing certain images, visuals, and we get Molly acting almost like she got possessed. Now, looks like she's having a seizure. She falls asleep. Ben's on the floor sleeping. She gets up and goes to visit Dylan, brings him into the room, basically tries to seduce him and kills him, and goes back to go visit, Ben and see how he's doing. And I mean, Ben's your typical, very quiet, obviously has a crush on her, so she takes advantage of him, has sex with him. And then at this point we're introduced into the real reason what happened to Jenna and Connor with the introduction of a malevolent character.
Yep. And that would actually be Grace. So it turns out that Grace had been there years before. I guess this must have been a convent, and a bunch of nuns were giving Grace an abortion. And I mean, I've never had an abortion. I've never seen a scene, but this was kind of not.
I would hope you haven't had an abortion.
Well, no, just I mean, I guess the thing is, I would not know what it would be like or what it would look like. So this did not look like how an abortion should be performed. Is basically when they showed you the shot.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out that the couple that was killed the year before, Grace basically wants her child to be born. You know, she ended up dying in the abortion, so she wants her child to be born. So she had made an offer to the couple the year before for basically them to have their child. They didn't do it, so she killed him. So she ended up possessing Molly and basically had sex with Ben so she can get knocked up. And so that way Molly can now give birth to her baby, you know, and then she ends up killing Ben because Ben's standing there with a bat in his hands, you know, and it was kind of weird though, because I noticed it with Ben and when they showed you the past footage is kind of the way that both the men were killed were kind of, it looked like they were crucified.
Yeah.
It looked like they were crucified. And Ben, when he got killed, you didn't really see, and like basically he stayed hanging on the wall, but you didn't see anything that impaled him. So I kind of thought that was a little bit on the cool side. As far as like, you know, they didn't need to use anything to put in there. Like her power was strong enough to do that. But it turns out that, you know, Molly ended up getting knocked up after all because Grace let her go, you know, so she walks out of there humming the same tune that they've been hearing the whole time, which was what the tune that Grace must have been humming when she was pregnant.
GR, anything else you want to add to it, or?
To be honest, out of all the stories, I felt like this was the most disappointing one.
Yeah,
that's just me though.
Well, it's because it's the more common one. We've seen this story before.
Yeah,
that's why. But it was okay. It was done well. I think the young cast did what they could with it, and it wasn't nothing offensive or nothing to be like, you know, oh, like that was bad. It was there. It was there.
Yeah.
One thing that wasn't there though for me was Santa. If I was to tell you, GR, right, Santa Claus going ham on a bunch of zombie elves, what would you say?
I thought I was watching Elf meets 28 Days Later. This is so hysterical. These little suckers where they're running. I mean, granted, there's some curse words that were used there that I will not use.
Yeah, but
scene where the angry elf, where he's pissed off, and here comes Miss Claus with a cookie, and he kind of rips into her.
Yeah, it's out there, man.
So, I mean, it was. This is where it went over the top, but it was meant to go over the top.
It doesn't work. It was. I loved it. It's not gonna work for everyone. Joe,
but it was pretty funny, Joe. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, I'm gonna keep this short. This part was corny for me. Like I could have done without it. I honestly could have really done without it. You know, I can't even do the freaking voice. But just hearing angry elves like, "And fuck you!" Like, no, like it was just because the other two stories, it just, I don't know, it broke the narrative on the other two stories.
Yeah, this is more
for me, somewhat.
This is more like Creepshow, and the other films or the other stories were more like Twilight Zone-ish, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I could have. For me, I don't have much to say on that part.
Well, JR, what do you got to say then?
Well, this is where, as the story comes to an end, we see the story come full circle. Because this is where, if you remember the beginning, we have the scene where Dangerous Dan's talking about the food drive at the mall and how Storm and Norman was going to be down there playing a special guest. You come to realize that, well, Santa wasn't really Santa. Santa was Storm and Norman having a psychotic episode. And those zombie elves he killed weren't really zombie elves. Joe, where were they?
They were all the mall people, like shoppers, workers. I mean, again,
how can you not like that?
Listen, I get that the twist was
no, I get it.
It's not a terrible twist. I guess for me, the twist, just the angry elves and the zombie elves, just the beginning to get me to the twist. You basically killed your twist because I already hated that part so much that the twist wasn't going to get me out of hating it, honestly.
So, Joe, I know if you watch our prior videos, Horror Fiends, you did not like Army of Darkness because it was too comical, over the top, goofy, cartoony. I got a sense that you don't like anything that has to do with a lot of like slapstick, huh?
Not at all. Not at all.
Well, you
Not
did like
at
Cabin in
all.
the Woods, though. You did like
I like Cabin
Woods.
in the Woods and Scream. Scream
Shaun
is
of the Dead.
Scream.
Oh, no, but
Scream is,
alright.
oh, so Shaun of the Dead is fucking awesome. No. Don't. It's just
No, I know. I just
it's
want,
just
I wanted to see your reaction,
because
yeah.
like again for me was
Yep.
you had these two good stories.
Yeah.
Like honestly, you could have taken the family, made that into its own movie.
Yeah.
You could have taken the paranormal part and actually turned that into its own movie too. I would not fucking go see Santa Claus fighting, zombie elves.
See,
No.
and that's where this rift lies, because the other stories, while done well, you kind of been there, done that in a sense. When have you ever seen Santa slaying zombie elves?
Well,
I
I
mean,
haven't, but
you
I don't want
haven't.
to.
All right,
But
you
I
know
don't
what?
want to.
That's
either.
fair.
Is-
That's fair.
Is the thing? I guess I get. You know what? Maybe if okay, Trilogy of Terror, like I mentioned earlier, is kind of a little on the corny side.
You're okay with this little tiki guy running,
That's what I'm saying.
hunting down Karen Black,
right.
know?
So it's corny, but you know
I
what?
got you.
But
I got you.
the story might have worked
Mhm.
if you had an anthology with a little bit of comedy in it.
But
Unfortunately,
in a sense, though, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish your point.
well, like I said, unfortunately, because the other two stories are a little bit on more the serious side, and this just kind of gave it the comedy. So for me, I'm not big on being taken in and out of my feelings or what have you when I'm watching a movie.
And that's where the problem lies.
It's kind of like you're into it and then being thrown cold water.
Yeah. That's the problem with this format where you're kind of going back and forth. You can't really set yourself, okay, I like that story. Oh, the story's good. Oh, I'm not a fan of this one, because those stories keep jumping back and forth. So you're going from like serious to the comedy, serious to the over the topness, serious to the goofiness.
Yeah.
It does take you out of it. Now, the fact that it was a psychotic episode, it was in his head. Yeah. That kind of brings it, the levity on that kind of evens out for him, because it wasn't, that was going on in his head the whole time. That wasn't like really happening. So there wasn't really zombie elves running around. That's what he was seeing. So to me, that it does balance it a little bit, but I do understand your point, because with the format, you keep jumping back and forth. So you're saying to yourself, what kind of film is this? Is it trying to be serious? Or I could understand that. I got you.
You could have done the psychotic break and just like maybe not made it zombie elves. I don't know. I guess that's just the part. It was the zombie elves part. It literally so many. I know
what to send Joe for Christmas now.
Do not send me a zombie elf. But no, I mean, like I said, it was just it is literally minute, but it was just that.
I got you. Yeah, I totally understand.
And I didn't hate the twist. Actually, I actually did like the twist. I really did.
You know, the funny part?
It was getting there, which kind of you weren't down for that ride. Essentially,
you can see when he was walking through that. It wasn't, it wasn't in the North Pole. Obviously, when he's Stormin Norm, was that his name?
Stormin
Norman. When he's walking around as Santa Claus, what he's looking at, you can tell that it wasn't. His eyes were seeing somewhat of a reality, and mixed in there with his psychotic break. It was just the fucking zombie elves.
Yeah, and let's not forget the slight foreshadowing before that, where you have, once again, Dangerous Dan, who at the beginning of the movie was in good spirits, and by this point he's holding a bottle drunk, talking about, look, don't go to the mall. I don't know how many hostages they have down there.
William Shatner,
telling you to stay home.
That guy's over 90 years old, man.
Oh my God. It was once you got to the end, and I love that because, he was all eggnog out.
Yeah, he was.
He was eggnog out.
He was drunk out of his gourd, man.
He was all egged out, and you got to it for even on his part, it changed the tone. However, his comic parts never took me out of the film.
Yeah.
Great.
That's the comparison in the comic parts in the Santa Claus part.
Yeah.
And then William Shatner's part is that William Shatner's comical parts never took me out of the film. It kept me in the flow of it. Like I said, it was just literally just that segment of, and I don't want to see Santa Claus and Krampus fight. This is supposed to be a horror movie.
Well, it kind of reminds you of Cabin in the Woods, though.
It's a
Because you had that
holiday.
comedy scene in between.
I know. Because right before you got to the twist, Santa Claus and Krampus were now, in a brawl, and which you hadn't mentioned before is part of the other part of Krampus is the chains when you saw him coming out. That's another part of the Krampus folklore is that he has chains on him. Yeah. But yeah, like I said, once we got to that, I'm like honestly, so this is how we're wrapping the movie up like this. And then you got the twist. And I'm like, all right, like I said, I didn't hate the twist. I just would have preferred that twist. My lead-in story to the twist that maybe had been something different.
So JR, right now, let's do it. We're down to the climax here. What would you rate a Christmas horror story or a holiday horror story, depending which copy you own or you watch or where you watch it? What you got? 1 to 5, brother.
This is a fun movie. I mean, this is one of those movies like it's for you to enjoy yourself. I mean, don't take it serious. It's a little bit for everybody. You got the zombies, paranormal, you got the folklore, you got the mythology section. You have a little bit of everything. I like that. I mean, come on, William Shatner. I mean, I give it a 3.5 out of 5. It's a fun movie to watch.
Yeah, for me, this movie was cool. I mean, it had a good part. It has hit bad parts. Here's the one thing. This is a Canadian horror movie. I also like watching my horror movies based on the countries they're from. And Canada's delivered some really good horror movies, because they gave us the original My Bloody Valentine, Ginger Snaps. I love Ginger Snaps, and Black Christmas, which we've talked about this before. Me and my love of the Final Girls. As I said, Jamie Lee Curtis. Jamie Lee Curtis is actually the American Final Girl. The true first Final Girl came from Canada's Black Christmas. That's where you got the first introduction. And The Changeling, which Rick, you mentioned, is also a Canadian horror movie.
So
yep.
We got a big Canadian connection.
Oh yeah, no, that's it. For me, why my brain kind of enjoyed it a little bit more is because I knew where it came from.
I'm going to assume this was a Canadian film, right?
That's why I'm mentioning.
So a lot of these actors are probably
Canadians.
Canadian, yeah.
Yes, that's why. If you look, the Dylan has been in a lot of shows that are basically filmed in Canada but are Canadian shows. But for me, I had it at 3.5. I'm keeping it at 3.5. I was gonna lower it to 3, but once we all talk tonight, I kept it at the 3.5. Before logging on, I was like, I'm gonna get this movie at 3. But talking to you guys, I'm bumping it up 3.5. I'm gonna add it to my Christmas stuff. I'm a corny person who puts things in my cycle for the holidays, and besides this, this is now going to be added to my cycle of movies for Christmas.
Yeah, this movie's harmless. I was gonna go 3 honestly. It's average in a sense, but talking about it, I'm gonna bump it up to 3.5 because it is a fun movie. Even Joe brings up the goofiness, the cheesiness he didn't like, which I respect, but the fact that he doesn't like it makes me like it even more because that just comes to show that it's out there. I'm not discrediting his opinion though; he has every right to that opinion. And I respect it. But what I'm trying to say is, I in a film like this, a Christmas horror story, when you give me zombie elves, I've never seen that before. Have you seen? Have any of you seen that before?
No.
No.
You're still not going to convince me.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm not. All right. Well, thank you once again, everybody. Happy holidays. It's that time of the year. Don't get too drunk. Don't drink and drive. Enjoy yourselves. Thank you for joining us. I am Ricky Grimes. We got JR. We got Joe.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Come back next week. JR, tell us what we got coming up.
we're gonna take a shift because we've done so many films that we haven't really touched the sci-fi kind of like horror thriller genre, and we're gonna do a 2021 film called In the Earth. None of us have watched it yet, but it's gotten very good reviews, so now's the time to sit back, watch it, and let's see what this is all about.
All right, I can't wait. I love discovering new stuff. Half the movies I see here because you two fine gentlemen recommend them. So
yeah, no, I'm looking forward to this. I
appreciate that. So happy holidays. Come back next week. 3 Corners of Horror brought to you by Horror Fiend TV. Be safe, guys. Peace.
Norman, stop! Please don't kill me, Norman.
Norman? Who's Norman?
What the fuck is wrong with you, Norman?